You keep explaining yourself because you still believe other people hold authority over your peace. Stop explaining yourself. Your mind was never meant to live under constant approval or endless defense. Today is not about comfort. It is about learning how to separate what is yours from what is not yours, and returning your attention to judgment, choice, and character. Every lesson here will challenge the way you react, justify, and surrender control to opinions you cannot govern. If you are ready to stop living in reaction and start living under reason, stay here and go through this with full attention. And if you want more Stoic discipline like this, subscribe and remain part of a space built for people who choose inner order over external noise. Number 1. Silence needs no defense ever. Stop explaining yourself. Not because you have nothing to say, and not because truth no longer matters, but because a man who is ruled by the need to justify himself has already surrendered part of his freedom. He has placed his peace in other people's hands. He has allowed their confusion, their suspicion, their impatience, and their ignorance to govern his inner life. He has become a servant to the hearing of others, and once you begin living like that, your days are no longer ordered by reason, they are ordered by reaction. Look closely at your own life. How many times have you spoken when silence would have kept you steady? How many times have you rushed to defend your motives, your choices, your worth, as if your own character were not something you were already required to prove through your conduct? How often have you felt the sharp need to correct a misunderstanding, as though the opinions of others were the final court before which your life must stand? There is a weakness here, and it is not small. It is the weakness of a mind that does not yet trust virtue enough to let it speak for itself. A disciplined life does not require constant commentary. A strong character does not chase every rumor. A steady mind does not pant after approval. The world will misunderstand you. That is not a tragedy. That is a fact. People will judge you by fragments. They will see a moment and invent a story. They will hear part of your words and fill the gaps with their own fears. They will look at your restraint and call it coldness. They will look at your caution and call it weakness. They will look at your silence and call it guilt. And if you have not trained yourself, you will feel the urge to rush in and rescue your image. Do not do it. What is under your control here? Your words, your judgment, your intention, your conduct, your choice to remain just, truthful, and self-governed. What is not under your control? Their interpretation, their mood, their memory, their appetite for gossip, their readiness to understand you, their willingness to be fair, their ability to see what you meant instead of what they prefer to imagine. Once you admit this honestly, the demand to explain yourself begins to lose its power. You are not required to master the minds of others. You are required to govern your own. This is where many people fail. They confuse explanation with duty. They think every accusation demands a reply, every silence demands a defense, every wrong impression demands immediate correction. But reason does not speak so anxiously. Reason asks first, is this necessary, or is this vanity disguised as principle? Is this a defense of what is true, or a defense of my wounded pride? Am I speaking to preserve justice, or to preserve an image? Am I clarifying what matters, or am I begging to be seen in a flattering light? These are not gentle questions. They are the questions that separate a free person from a dependent one. Because the need to explain yourself often hides a more dangerous need, the need to be approved. And approval is a fickle master. It makes you soft where you should be firm. It makes you perform where you should simply act. It makes you turn your life into a plea. The moment you begin to live for approval, you begin to betray your own judgment. You begin speaking not from principle but from fear. You begin editing yourself to fit the room. You begin surrendering your center so that others may be comfortable. But comfort is not the highest good. Virtue is. The only thing that truly belongs to you is the condition of your character. The only thing worth protecting without compromise is your ability to choose what is just, what is honest, what is disciplined, what is courageous. If you hold fast to that, you can endure being misunderstood. You can endure being underestimated. You can endure being misread by people who never intended to understand you. What you cannot endure, without becoming divided against yourself, is a habit of falsehood. And falsehood enters quietly when you shape your words solely to manage other people's reactions. There is a difference between explaining what is necessary and pleading for acceptance. Learn that difference. A clear mind knows when a correction is needed. A clear mind knows when a statement would prevent harm, preserve justice, or fulfill a duty. But a clear mind also knows when to remain still. It knows that some battles are beneath the dignity of a self-respecting soul. It knows that some misunderstandings are not yours to carry. It knows that not every silence is weakness, and not every response is strength. There are times when to speak is to descend. There are times when to remain silent is to stand above the noise without arrogance, simply because your mind refuses to be dragged into another person's confusion. Many people talk too much because they do not trust time. They do not trust that truth will reveal itself in action. They do not trust that a stable life eventually clarifies what frantic speech cannot. They imagine that if they do not explain themselves at once, they will lose everything. They are afraid of the space between the accusation and the understanding. They are afraid of being temporarily unseen. But why should you fear what is temporary? Why should you panic over a momentary shadow when you can hold to the light of your own judgment? If your character is sound, it does not vanish because someone failed to notice it today. Train yourself to stand still inside the storm. The first practice is simple and severe. Before you answer any charge, any slight, any misinterpretation, pause. Not a theatrical pause, a real one. Let the mind breathe before the mouth moves. Ask whether the matter concerns truth, justice, or duty. If it does not, let it pass. Do not hand over your tranquility to every passing disturbance. The untrained mind calls this passivity. The disciplined mind calls it self-rule. There is a great difference between the two. Passivity avoids action because it fears discomfort. Self-rule withholds unnecessary action because it values reason over impulse. The next practice is to separate fact from offense. Someone says, "You were rude." Is the fact that you were rude, or that they felt hurt, or that they are projecting old resentment onto a present event? Do not merge all these things into one burning mass. Examine them. There is the event, there is the interpretation, and there is your response. Only one of these belongs fully to you. Your job is not to defend your ego against every uncomfortable sentence. Your job is to see clearly. If you were wrong, correct it. If you were not wrong, stop acting as if your worth depends on persuading everyone of your innocence. Virtue does not tremble under false witness. This is where honesty becomes difficult. It is easy to call yourself stoic while secretly trying to look superior. It is easy to say, "I do not care what people think," while actually caring very much and merely hiding it behind contempt. That is not strength. That is posture. True strength does not sneer at others' opinions. True strength simply refuses to obey them. It neither grovels nor boasts. It does not need to announce its independence. It lives it. If people praise you, remain modest. If they blame you without cause, remain just. If they misunderstand you, remain steady. Do not convert every external noise into an internal command. There is another danger here. Sometimes you explain yourself not because you seek truth, but because you fear being wrong. This fear can become a weakness if it turns into dependence on other minds for confirmation. You begin to over-explain to prove that you are careful, thoughtful, innocent, intelligent, or kind. But a person who is truly careful does not need to advertise it. A person who is truly thoughtful does not need to narrate every thought. A person who is truly innocent does not need to plead like a frightened child. Let your life be exact. Let your behavior be upright. Let your speech be restrained. This is far more persuasive than 100 defensive sentences. At work, this discipline will test you. Someone will question your decision. Someone will imply that you lack competence. Someone will interrupt you and demand a justification before you have even finished the task. Your impulse will be to defend your worth in the moment, to explain every detail, to lay out every reason, to prove that you deserve your place. But ask yourself whether proving your worth to the impatient is actually your task. The task is to do the work well. The task is to remain fair. The task is to think clearly and act with integrity. If you must answer, answer plainly. If you must correct, correct calmly. But do not bleed your peace into a performance. The mind that cannot bear being doubted will become exhausted long before the day ends. In relationships, this teaching becomes even harder. You will want to explain yourself to the person whose opinion matters most to you. You will want them to see your heart, your effort, your good intentions. There is something human in that. But even here, you must distinguish between honest communication and emotional begging. Speak when clarity serves the bond. Speak when silence would become neglect or deceit. But do not imagine that endless defense creates understanding. Often it creates fatigue. Often it creates resentment. Often it turns a simple misunderstanding into a contest of egos. Speak the truth, then stop. The rest is theirs to receive or reject. You are responsible for sincerity, not for control. A person who lives according to reason does not treat every relationship as a courtroom. There is no need to produce endless evidence for your character. Let your conduct testify. Let consistency speak. If your words are aligned with your deeds over time, the worthy will understand, and the unworthy were never going to understand anyway. Do not mistake the desire to be known for the duty to be endlessly explained. Some people are unwilling to see what is before them because they are attached to their own story. You cannot force sight into a closed mind. This is why the practice of silence is not merely about withholding speech. It is about refusing to be owned by external judgment. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin to feel the raw anxiety that has been driving you. That anxiety says, "What if they think badly of me?" And here is the proper answer: then let them. What if they misunderstand my motive? Then let them. What if they accuse me unfairly? Then let them. What if I am not admired? Then let them. None of this touches the quality of your character unless you consent to it. Their opinion is theirs. Your judgment is yours. One is outside your power. The other is your kingdom. Guard your kingdom, but do not twist this into arrogance. Stoic silence is not contempt for others. It is not a proud refusal to hear correction. That would be foolishness dressed as dignity. A disciplined person listens when correction is useful. He learns from truth even when truth arrives through an unkind mouth. He does not think himself above review. He examines himself daily. He asks where he was weak, where he was careless, where he yielded to vanity, where he sought applause instead of justice. This is not self-hatred. This is self-governance. Each evening, return to your own conduct and question it without mercy and without drama. What did I say today that was unnecessary? Where did I try to protect my image instead of my principles? What did I explain that could have been left alone? What did I answer out of pride? What did I remain silent about that should have been addressed with courage? This is how you become stronger, not by flattering yourself, but by seeing yourself plainly. And when you see yourself plainly, you will notice how much of your explanation habit comes from fear. Fear of being thought foolish, fear of being discarded, fear of being exposed, fear of not being enough. But what is the proper answer to fear in Stoic life? Not denial, not fantasy, discipline. You are enough to act rightly. You are enough to face misunderstanding. You are enough to stand without applause. You are enough to endure a reputation that does not perfectly match reality. The only question is whether you will choose dignity over comfort. Practice saying less, not because speech is evil, but because excess speech is a sign of unrest. Speak with purpose. Speak with precision. Speak with restraint. Leave behind the urge to decorate yourself with explanations. Notice how often you repeat the same point in different forms because you do not trust that it landed. Notice how often you add extra words to soften the truth because you fear how it will be received. Notice how often you explain not to inform, but to preempt disapproval. Cut this away. Say what needs to be said. Then let your words stand on their own feet. There is power in a man who does not chase after immediate vindication. He is not intoxicated by being seen correctly at once. He knows that time reveals character more faithfully than self-defense does. He understands that the same people who misread him today may later be corrected by reality, and that this correction does not require his panic. He does not sit in chains waiting for everyone to agree with him before he can sleep. He has put his trust in what is stable. That is why he is hard to shake. He has learned to value inner order over public clarity, and because of that, public confusion cannot easily enter his soul. Yet there is a danger even in silence, the danger of becoming indifferent to truth. Do not fall into that. The goal is not to become unreachable. The goal is to become deliberate. If silence serves virtue, keep it. If words serve virtue, use them. But never let vanity pretend to be necessity. Never let emotional panic pretend to be moral urgency. There are moments when a calm explanation is the just thing to do. There are moments when your silence would allow harm to grow. A wise person recognizes these moments without theatrics. He is not ruled by a rigid script. He is ruled by reason. In your daily life, make this a discipline. When a misunderstanding arises, do not answer immediately. Let the first heat pass. Examine the matter. Ask whether your reply would improve the situation or merely improve your image. Ask whether you are speaking from duty or from the need to be seen favorably. Ask whether the other person is capable of hearing what you have to say. Some conversations are wasted on minds that have already chosen their conclusion. Do not keep hurling yourself against a closed door. Turn your energy toward what is yours to govern: your speech, your face, your conduct, your patience. This will change the texture of your life. You will become less anxious, but more exacting, less performative, but more just, less eager to win arguments, but more committed to truth. You will discover that much of what once felt like urgency was really vanity in distress. You will see how often you spoke because you wanted to escape discomfort immediately. And you will learn that discomfort, endured with reason, does not harm you. In fact, it strengthens you. Each time you resist the urge to over-explain, you build muscle in the soul. You teach yourself that no unjust opinion can force you into disorder unless you surrender to it. This is how freedom begins. Freedom is not the ability to make everyone understand you. Freedom is the ability to remain governed by principle even when they do not. Freedom is the refusal to let other people's confusion become your own. Freedom is the calm refusal to sell your peace for a temporary clearing of the air. A man who must be understood by everyone is still a slave. A man who can act rightly without universal agreement has begun to live as he should. Take one more practice with you. Once each day, deliberately refrain from explaining something you ordinarily would defend. It may be a small matter, a mistaken assumption about your schedule, a casual remark taken the wrong way, a silence that others fill with their own story. Let it pass when justice permits. Notice the discomfort. Do not run from it. Observe how quickly the mind wants to sprint toward correction. Then ask, what is happening inside me right now? Is this truly about truth, or am I trying to protect myself from the sting of being misread? Sit with that answer. The aim is not to become passive in all things. The aim is to strip away compulsion. The aim is to make speech a choice, not a reflex. And when you must speak, do so with the dignity of one who has no need to prove himself. Say less than the anxious man would say. Say more truth than the vain man would dare. Keep your tone even. Keep your motives clean. Keep your standards high. If the truth is enough, trust it. If your conduct is enough, trust it. If your silence is enough, trust it. You do not need to turn every moment into a public trial. Remember this when the old temptation rises. The temptation will say, explain yourself now, or you will be misjudged forever. It is a lie. Misjudgment is not forever, unless you make your life dependent on controlling it. The temptation will say, defend yourself, or they will think less of you. So what? They are not the measure of your worth. The temptation will say, clear your name, or your honor will be damaged. Your honor is damaged only when you behave dishonorably. Nothing else has that power. What people think may disturb your reputation. It cannot stain your virtue unless you let it. So return to the center. Return to what is yours. Return to your judgment, your intention, your conduct, your self-command. Do not explain yourself into exhaustion. Do not talk yourself into a prison built from other people's expectations. Do not become a man who lives his life as an extended defense. That is not strength. That is captivity. Be the man who can be still without becoming weak. Be the man who can be silent without becoming evasive. Be the man who can be misunderstood without losing his shape. Be the man who values the judgment of reason more than the applause of the crowd. Be the man who knows that virtue is not proved by speech, but by the steady fact of a life lived well. There will be days when your restraint feels heavy. There will be moments when your throat tightens and you want to explain everything to everyone. Let those moments come. They are part of the training. Do not be ashamed of them. Just do not obey them. The mind grows strong by resisting what is unnecessary. The soul grows upright by staying loyal to what is right, even when it is not appreciated. The person who can endure being misunderstood and remain just has taken a real step toward freedom. Today, begin there. Before you answer, pause. Before you defend, examine. Before you seek approval, ask whether you are abandoning principle. Before you speak, consider whether silence would be wiser. Before you fear their judgment, remember that your duty is not to control their minds, but to govern your own. That is enough. That is everything. And if you do this faithfully, your life will become quieter, stronger, and truer. You will no longer live as a man pleading to be accepted. You will live as a man answering only to what is just. Number 2. Control opinions, not people's judgment. The greatest mistake the undisciplined mind makes is believing that peace depends on controlling what other people think. From the moment you wake until the moment you close your eyes, countless judgments move through your mind. Some are about yourself. Some are about other people. Some are about the future. Others are about the past. Yet among all these judgments, one desire quietly steals your freedom more than almost any other. The desire to control how you are seen. You cannot govern another person's judgment. You cannot force wisdom into a careless mind, nor fairness into a resentful one, nor gratitude into an ungrateful heart. You cannot decide what another person notices, remembers, exaggerates, or ignores. Yet every day people exhaust themselves trying to accomplish exactly that. They spend hours rehearsing conversations that have not happened. They replay old disagreements, imagining the perfect response. They reshape their personality depending on who stands before them. Without realizing it, they have handed over the direction of their own lives to minds they do not control. The disciplined life begins the moment you stop making another person's judgment your responsibility. This does not mean becoming indifferent to justice or refusing to hear correction. It means understanding the boundary that reason draws with perfect clarity. Your character belongs to you, their opinion belongs to them. Once these two become confused, suffering follows as naturally as night follows day. Consider how many decisions have been guided by fear rather than wisdom. You remained silent when truth required courage because you feared criticism. You spoke when silence would have preserved dignity because you feared misunderstanding. You accepted work that violated your principles because you feared appearing unsuccessful. You delayed necessary action because you imagined disapproval before it had even arrived. None of these choices came from reason. They came from surrendering your judgment to the imagined judgments of others. The mind has a dangerous habit. It transforms possibilities into certainties. Someone looks away during a conversation and you conclude they dislike you. A message goes unanswered and you assume rejection. A single criticism arrives and you believe your entire character has been exposed as inadequate. Notice what has happened. Reality has not wounded you. Your own judgment about reality has done the damage. This is why the first work of the day is not managing events. It is governing interpretation. Before you enter the demands of the morning, remain still for several moments. Ask yourself a simple question. What belongs to me today? The answer is never another person's approval. It is never the outcome of every effort. It is never the behavior of strangers, colleagues, family members, or friends. What belongs to you is your attention, your honesty, your discipline, your fairness, your patience, and your willingness to act according to reason, regardless of circumstances. Carry this answer with you throughout the day. Every challenge will attempt to make you forget it. Someone may question your competence. Another may misunderstand your intention. Someone else may praise you beyond what you deserve. None of these events determine who you are. They only present opportunities to examine whether your own judgment remains steady. Praise deserves the same caution as criticism. Many people imagine only harsh words threaten their freedom. Pleasant words can be equally dangerous when they become the foundation of self-worth. If your confidence rises with applause, it will collapse with blame. A stable mind refuses both forms of dependence. It welcomes honest feedback without becoming intoxicated by admiration or crushed by disapproval. This demands continuous attention because the human mind naturally drifts toward external measurements. It asks, "How do they see me?" instead of asking, "Have I acted with integrity?" These are not the same question. One seeks control over another person's thoughts. The other examines the only territory where genuine improvement is possible. Every difficult encounter offers a hidden exercise. When someone speaks unfairly, resist the urge to answer immediately. Delay the reaction long enough to examine your first impression. Is your anger coming from injustice itself or from wounded pride? Are you defending truth or defending an image you have created of yourself? The distinction is essential. Pride reacts instantly. Reason investigates before responding. There will be moments when criticism is deserved. Welcome those moments without resentment. A person committed to virtue does not fear discovering personal faults. Hidden weaknesses cannot be corrected until they are seen. Honest correction is not an enemy, it is an ally disguised as discomfort. Yet many criticisms deserve no residence within your mind. Some arise from envy, some from ignorance, others from misunderstanding. The disciplined person examines each one carefully rather than accepting or rejecting it automatically. If it contains truth, keep the truth and abandon the bitterness. If it contains falsehood, release it without carrying unnecessary anger into the rest of the day. This practice protects the mind from becoming a battlefield occupied by every passing opinion. Notice how easily emotion demands immediate agreement with itself. Embarrassment insists that everyone is judging you. Anxiety insists disaster is approaching. Pride insists you must defend yourself at once. None of these emotions deserve unquestioned authority. They are visitors, not rulers. Reason must always ask for evidence before granting permission to believe them. Throughout the day, train yourself to pause whenever strong emotion appears. Instead of saying, "This situation is terrible," ask, "What judgment have I attached to this situation?" Instead of saying, "They have ruined my peace," ask, "Why have I allowed another person's behavior to determine the condition of my own mind?" The answer may be uncomfortable, but discomfort often reveals where attachment has quietly taken root. You may discover that your peace has become dependent upon recognition. You may discover that your confidence depends upon agreement. You may discover that your happiness rises and falls according to conversations over which you possess no authority whatsoever. Do not condemn yourself when you find these habits. Observe them honestly. Self-deception delays freedom. Honest examination begins it. Every evening, review the movements of your own mind with the same seriousness that a craftsman inspects his tools. Ask yourself where another person's opinion governed your choices. Ask where fear of criticism weakened your courage. Ask where praise tempted you toward vanity. Ask where resentment lingered because someone refused to see you fairly. Do not perform this examination to produce guilt. Perform it to produce clarity. Tomorrow cannot be governed wisely if today remains unexplored. Another useful discipline is to deliberately welcome small opportunities to release the need for approval. Share a thoughtful opinion without measuring everyone's reaction afterward. Complete good work without expecting recognition. Offer kindness without demanding gratitude. Accept that some efforts will pass unnoticed. These moments strengthen independence far more effectively than grand declarations about confidence. Each time you act according to principle rather than applause, you remind yourself that your deepest responsibility is not public admiration but private integrity. The world constantly invites comparison. It encourages measuring your worth against wealth, influence, appearance, popularity, or reputation. Accepting this invitation guarantees endless dissatisfaction because these measurements remain unstable. Someone will always possess more. Someone will always receive greater attention. Someone will always attract louder praise. Reason refuses this competition. The disciplined person measures only one thing: whether today's choices were more governed by wisdom than yesterday's. This comparison never depends upon another person's success or failure. It remains entirely within your own authority. When you understand this, envy begins to lose its power. Another person's achievements no longer diminish your own opportunity to practice virtue. Their recognition cannot steal your honesty. Their popularity cannot remove your courage. Their reputation cannot interfere with your self-command unless you willingly surrender it. Many people imagine freedom means unlimited choice. Yet true freedom begins somewhere much quieter. It begins when your inner condition no longer changes every time another person's opinion changes. Imagine entering every conversation without needing victory. Imagine completing every task without craving applause. Imagine receiving criticism without panic and praise without intoxication. Imagine ending each day asking only whether you acted with justice, discipline, wisdom, and courage. Such a life cannot be controlled from the outside. This is not emotional numbness, it is emotional discipline. Feelings continue to arise, but they no longer command immediate obedience. They are examined before they become beliefs. They are questioned before they become actions. In this space between impression and response, your freedom quietly grows. There will always be people who misunderstand your motives. Others will reduce years of character to a single mistake. Some will admire qualities that deserve no admiration while overlooking virtues that matter most. None of this changes the work before you. Your task remains exactly the same. Think carefully, speak truthfully, act justly, endure difficulty without complaint. Correct yourself before attempting to correct the world. Return again and again to the small territory that belongs entirely to you, your judgments, your choices, your intentions, and your character. Every morning offers another opportunity to begin this work. Every conversation offers another opportunity to practice it. Every disappointment offers another opportunity to strengthen it. Do not waste your strength trying to manage thoughts that exist in another person's mind. That labor has no end because it never belonged to you in the first place. Instead, direct every effort toward governing the judgments formed within your own mind. There lies the beginning of peace. There lies the beginning of freedom. There lies the only victory that cannot be taken away because it depends upon no audience, no applause, and no permission except the steady agreement of your own reason with what is right. Number 3. Let actions replace empty explanations. You spend too much of your life trying to explain what your conduct should already have made clear. That is the first truth you must face. Not because words are worthless, but because words become weak the moment they are used to cover what action has not yet accomplished. A man who must keep narrating his goodness has not yet made his goodness firm. A mind that keeps defending itself without end has not yet learned to stand on its own evidence. The world is full of people who speak about discipline while their habits remain soft, people who praise honesty while avoiding their own faults, people who talk about strength while collapsing at the first strain. Do not become one of them. Let your life do the speaking. Let your actions carry the burden that empty explanation cannot carry. The undisciplined mind wants to be understood before it has been tested. It wants credit before effort, sympathy before responsibility, and recognition before endurance. That is why it rushes into explanation. It fears being misread, and that fear exposes a deeper weakness, attachment to the opinion of others. When your inner worth depends on whether people immediately grasp your motives, you have already placed your peace in a place that can be taken from you. Another person's misunderstanding becomes your torment. Another person's impatience becomes your panic. Another person's silence becomes your collapse. This is not freedom. This is dependence disguised as sensitivity. Reason does not live this way. Reason knows that character is shown over time through repeated choices, not by a speech delivered under pressure. If you are just, be just. If you are patient, be patient. If you are truthful, be truthful. If you are restrained, be restrained. You do not need to decorate these things with constant commentary. A house does not need to explain that it is built well. A blade does not announce that it is sharp. Their use reveals them. So it is with you. The burden is not to convince the world with words. The burden is to form a life that is consistent enough to require no pleading. Look carefully at how often your explanations are really attempts at self-protection. You explain because you want to escape discomfort. You explain because you fear being blamed. You explain because you want to preserve your image. You explain because you are not yet willing to let your conduct be judged by its actual quality. But every time you scatter your attention into defending yourself, you weaken the very thing that should be strengthened, your capacity to remain steady and upright in the face of misunderstanding. A person trained in philosophy does not panic when not instantly praised. He does not become unstable when questioned. He does not turn every challenge into a drama. He returns to the work. That work begins before the day begins. When you wake, do not ask how you can be noticed. Ask how you can be useful. Do not ask how you can be defended. Ask how you can be disciplined. Do not ask what words you can use to shape other people's impression of you. Ask what kind of person you must become so that your conduct needs little defense. This is the proper opening of the day, a silent inventory of your obligations to yourself. What judgments must I guard today? What temptations will make me speak too much, react too fast, or explain what should be demonstrated instead? What duties await me that require patience, courage, fairness, and self-command? This is where your preparation must begin, not in performance, but in inner order. There is a hard rule here, and you must not soften it. You are responsible for your own action, not for the applause that may or may not follow. You are responsible for choosing what is noble, not for ensuring that every observer understands your choice. This means that some of your best actions will be done in obscurity. Some will be misunderstood at first. Some will be criticized by people who do not know enough to judge them well. This is part of the price of living according to reason. If you demand universal recognition before you act, you will become timid. If you wait for perfect approval, you will remain idle. If you require your motives to be praised before your duty is complete, you are not yet ruled by virtue. You are ruled by vanity. Let this sink in. Your life does not improve because you explain more. It improves because you execute better. When criticism appears, examine it without surrendering to it. There may be truth in it, and if there is, take the truth without pride. There may be distortion in it, and if there is, leave the distortion where it belongs. But do not waste your energy constructing long defenses for every accusation. That habit trains the soul to become reactive, and reaction is the sign of a mind that has not yet become its own master. A disciplined person does not answer the world from a place of wounded vanity. He answers from a place of moral clarity. He can say, "This is true, and I must correct it," or "This is false, and I need not carry it." And then he moves on to the business of living well. This is especially important in relationships. Many people think explanation is the same as care. It is not. Care is shown in patience, in consistency, in loyalty to principle, in the willingness to act justly when it is inconvenient. Explanation is often cheaper than that. It can become a substitute for repair, a substitute for change, a substitute for real effort. A person says, "Let me explain why I failed," when what is needed is to stop failing. Another says, "You do not understand me," when what is needed is to become understandable through better conduct. Another says, "I had my reasons," when the real issue is that the reasons were not governed by reason at all. Be careful here. This is not a call to silence in all things. It is a call to discipline in all things. Speak when speech serves truth, justice, or necessary order. Explain when an explanation prevents harm or restores rightful understanding. But refuse the endless habit of talking to soothe your own insecurity. Refuse the urge to narrate yourself constantly as though the world were obliged to keep up with your inner weather. The stronger path is to become a person whose conduct is so aligned with principle that explanation becomes rare, measured, and useful. There is another practice you must adopt today. Separate what is yours from what is not yours before you react. Is another person's opinion yours? No. Is their mood yours? No. Is their misunderstanding yours? No. Is their refusal to see your intention yours? No. Is your response to their behavior yours? Yes. Is your restraint yours? Yes. Is your willingness to act justly in the face of annoyance yours? Yes. This division must become second nature. Without it, you will remain trapped in the moods of others, spending your life trying to manage what was never assigned to you. With it, you will become harder to disturb and harder to deceive. This distinction will expose the habits that have been draining you. Many of your complaints are simply protests against the fact that reality does not obey your preferences. You wanted immediate understanding, and it did not come. You wanted gratitude, and it was delayed. You wanted your effort to be noticed, and it was overlooked. You wanted your decision to be praised, and it was criticized. The immature response is to lament the world's failure to honor your expectations. The disciplined response is to examine whether your expectations were attached to things outside your control. If they were, release them. The world owes you no particular response. Your duty is to act well regardless. Do not mistake this for coldness. It is not cold to refuse false dependence. It is not cold to refuse to let your soul be tossed around by every reaction from outside. It is sane. It is upright. It is the refusal to build your house on shifting sand. A person who depends on continuous approval is forever anxious. A person who depends on virtue becomes steady. One waits to be told he is enough. The other proves it through the quality of his life. Every evening, sit with your day honestly. Ask yourself where you explained out of fear instead of speaking from duty. Ask where you remained silent when a calm correction was needed. Ask where your words were longer than your resolve. Ask where you promised yourself change and then delayed it by talking about it instead of doing it. There is no benefit in theatrical guilt, but there is great value in honest review. See your failures plainly, see your successes plainly, then choose tomorrow's conduct with greater precision. This is how the soul trains itself, not by fantasy, but by repeated examination and correction. You must also learn to endure the discomfort of being unfinished. There will be times when your actions are still forming and your character is not yet what it should be. In those moments, the temptation will be to explain yourself into legitimacy, to persuade others that your intention was better than your result. But intention alone does not complete the work. A good intention that is not translated into good action remains incomplete. Do not hide behind your motives. Ask whether your deeds were worthy. If they were not, correct them. If they were, let them stand. You do not need to deliver a speech each time your conscience is challenged. The honest answer is often simple: I must do better. Then do better. The more you practice this, the more your life will gain a kind of seriousness that cannot be faked. People may still misunderstand you. That will happen. Some will still judge too quickly. That will happen too. But your inner life will no longer be organized around trying to manage every impression. You will spend less time chasing explanations and more time living in a way that makes explanations unnecessary. That shift changes everything. It frees your attention for what matters. It quiets the mind. It reduces the itch to perform. It returns your energy to duty. There is dignity in this. Not the brittle dignity of pride which feels insulted by every challenge, but the solid dignity of a mind that knows where it stands. This dignity does not need to advertise itself. It is visible in restraint. It is visible in consistency. It is visible in the refusal to become theatrical when life presses hard. It is visible when a person is wronged and does not become unjust in response. It is visible when a person is questioned and does not lose his bearings. It is visible when a person is ignored and continues doing what is right without complaint. Take this with you. The world is not improved by your explanations unless those explanations lead to better action. Words that do not become conduct are smoke. They rise, they blur the air, and then they vanish. Action, by contrast, leaves a mark. It shapes habit. It builds character. It creates trust. It gives form to the soul. Therefore, every time you feel the urge to defend yourself with unnecessary language, ask whether the better work is simply to act. Do the task well. Correct the fault. Endure the misunderstanding. Keep your attention where it belongs. Let the day show what your mouth has been trying too hard to say. A life governed by reason becomes simpler. Not easy, but simpler. The need to explain yourself fades because the need to prove yourself fades. The need to convince others weakens because the need to rely on others' approval weakens. The mind becomes less noisy, the heart becomes less reactive, the will becomes more reliable. You begin to understand that the truest defense of your character is to live in such a way that your conduct over time makes your explanations small and your integrity large. Begin now. Choose one area where you have been talking in place of acting. Replace the speech with work. Choose one habit of self-defense that keeps you tied to other people's reactions. Release it. Choose one conversation where you normally over-explain. Say only what is necessary, and then let your conduct continue the sentence. Choose one duty that you have delayed because you wanted better conditions, better understanding, or better recognition. Stop waiting. Start doing. This is the path. Not endless commentary. Not anxious self-justification. Not a life spent begging to be received correctly. A life of action, measured speech, self-command, and quiet fidelity to virtue. In that life, you no longer need to decorate your character with explanations. You are already building it, one disciplined act at a time. Number 4. Accept misunderstanding without inner disturbance. One of the deepest tests of your character is not whether people praise you, but whether you remain inwardly undisturbed when they fail to understand you. Many believe suffering begins when another person misjudges their intentions. That is not where suffering begins. It begins much earlier, at the moment you decide that another person's understanding is necessary for your peace. From that moment forward, your tranquility no longer belongs to you. It depends upon a condition you cannot command. Look honestly at your own experience. How many hours have been consumed by conversations that happened only inside your mind? How many evenings have been spent replaying a misunderstanding, searching for different words that might have changed another person's opinion? How often have you imagined that if only they understood your motives, your heart would finally become quiet? Yet even after explanation, uncertainty remains. One person accepts your words while another questions them. One believes you while another doubts you. If your peace depends upon universal understanding, then peace will remain forever beyond your reach. The disciplined mind begins by accepting a difficult truth. Every person sees the world through the condition of their own judgment. No one looks directly at reality. They look through habits, memories, desires, fears, disappointments, and expectations. When another person misunderstands you, they are not simply observing your actions. They are interpreting them according to the state of their own mind. This realization should not fill you with resentment. It should free you from unnecessary struggle. You cannot enter another person's thoughts and arrange them into perfect order. You cannot remove every prejudice they carry or every conclusion they have already accepted. Trying to govern another person's perception is like trying to command the direction of the wind. Your effort may be sincere, but the object itself refuses your authority. Wisdom begins when you stop exhausting yourself attempting what has never belonged to your control. This does not mean abandoning truth. It means placing truth where it properly belongs. Truth first belongs inside your own character. Before asking whether others see you correctly, ask whether you are seeing yourself correctly. Before demanding fairness from another mind, demand honesty from your own. Many people become consumed by the unfair judgments they receive while quietly ignoring the false judgments they repeatedly make about themselves. They excuse anger as righteousness. They call fear caution. They rename pride as self-respect. They blame circumstances for weaknesses they refuse to examine. Such self-deception causes greater harm than misunderstanding ever could. Each morning, before the noise of the world reaches you, establish one intention. Tell yourself that today you will meet opinions that differ from your own. Some will be thoughtful, others will be careless. Some will be generous, others will be harsh. None of these opinions possess authority over your character unless you voluntarily submit to them. Your responsibility is not to control their conclusions. Your responsibility is to govern your response with justice, patience, and reason. Carry this discipline into every encounter. When someone questions your motives, resist the instinct to react before you have examined your own impression. Notice the immediate tightening within the mind. Notice the desire to defend, to interrupt, to persuade, or to retaliate. These movements arise quickly because habit has trained them for years, yet habit is not destiny. Between the first impression and the final response exists a space where reason may enter. That brief pause is one of the greatest sources of inner freedom. Ask yourself a simple question before speaking. Has my peace truly been threatened, or has only my preference been disappointed? The difference matters greatly. Your preference may be to receive understanding, appreciation, and fairness. Those are natural desires. But when preference hardens into necessity, disturbance follows. The mind begins demanding that reality satisfy conditions it was never obligated to satisfy. From that demand grows frustration, bitterness, and endless complaint. The disciplined life refuses to make impossible demands upon the world. It accepts that misunderstanding is part of human existence. Just as seasons change and bodies grow older, people will sometimes misread your intentions despite your best efforts. This fact is neither injustice nor catastrophe. It is simply another circumstance requiring the practice of virtue. When misunderstanding appears, examine first whether correction serves wisdom or merely serves wounded pride. There are moments when clarification prevents genuine harm. In such moments, speak with calm precision. Do not exaggerate. Do not accuse. Do not attempt to conquer another person's thinking. Present what is true without attachment to the outcome. Once you have fulfilled your duty to speak honestly, release the result. Whether they accept or reject your explanation belongs to them, not to you. Other situations require an entirely different discipline. Some misunderstandings cannot be removed because the other person has already chosen their conclusion. Continuing the argument no longer serves truth. It only feeds resentment. Here, restraint becomes an act of strength rather than surrender. Silence is not defeat when reason determines that further words no longer produce understanding. Many people confuse emotional intensity with moral importance. They believe that because they feel deeply wounded, the situation must demand immediate action. Yet strong emotion proves only that the mind has formed a powerful judgment. It does not prove that the judgment is accurate. Therefore, examine every painful impression before accepting it as reality. If another person's words disturb you throughout an entire day, ask yourself what belief has allowed those words such authority. Have you decided that your worth depends upon their approval? Have you concluded that your character exists only if they acknowledge it? Have you secretly appointed strangers as judges over your peace? Such beliefs deserve examination more urgently than the criticism itself. Another valuable practice is learning to distinguish between reputation and character. Reputation lives in the minds of others. Character lives within your own choices. Reputation changes without your permission. Character changes only through your own decisions. One may rise or fall according to rumor, misunderstanding, or praise. The other grows stronger each time you choose wisdom instead of impulse, fairness instead of resentment, discipline instead of complaint. The mistake of the undisciplined mind is believing these two things are identical. It spends enormous effort protecting reputation while neglecting character. Yet even a flawless reputation cannot repair a corrupt soul, while a disciplined character remains valuable even when misunderstood. Throughout your day, observe how quickly your attention leaves what belongs to you. A conversation ends awkwardly, and your thoughts chase another person's interpretation. A message receives no reply, and your imagination invents explanations beyond your knowledge. A passing remark awakens insecurity, and suddenly your inner life revolves around assumptions rather than facts. Every such moment offers an opportunity to return your attention to what reason actually permits you to know. Say to yourself, I know my intention because I chose it. I know my conduct because I performed it. Beyond that, much remains uncertain. This habit protects the mind from constructing unnecessary suffering out of imagined conclusions. Do not seek comfort by convincing yourself that misunderstanding never matters. That would merely replace attachment with denial. Instead, acknowledge that it may hurt while refusing to let hurt become your ruler. Pain enters naturally. Lasting disturbance enters only when judgment continues feeding it long after the event has passed. Each evening, perform another kind of examination. Rather than asking who misunderstood you, ask where you misunderstood yourself. Where did impatience disguise itself as urgency? Where did vanity pretend to be concern for justice? Where did fear wear the clothing of careful planning? Where did resentment quietly present itself as moral superiority? These questions require courage because they remove the convenient habit of placing every difficulty upon other people. You may discover that many conflicts began long before another person's words appeared. They began inside your own expectations. You expected universal agreement. You expected appreciation without delay. You expected every sincere effort to receive immediate recognition. When reality failed to obey these expectations, disappointment naturally followed. The solution is not forcing reality to change. The solution is examining the expectations themselves. A person governed by reason gradually develops a remarkable stability. This stability does not arise because life becomes easier. It arises because the mind stops demanding certainty from uncertain things. It no longer insists that every relationship remain harmonious, every conversation remain fair, or every observer remain generous. Instead, it asks only one enduring question: have I acted according to virtue within the limits of my own authority? If the answer is yes, rest peacefully regardless of misunderstanding. If the answer is no, correction begins with yourself rather than accusation toward others. Practice welcoming small opportunities to strengthen this discipline. Allow a minor misunderstanding to pass without carrying it into the rest of your day. Resist checking repeatedly whether someone has changed their opinion of you. Complete good work without searching constantly for acknowledgement. These quiet exercises prepare the soul for greater difficulties that will surely arrive. Remember also that you misunderstand others more often than you realize. You judge motives without complete knowledge. You interpret expressions according to your own mood. You assign intention where only uncertainty exists. Recognizing your own limitations should make you slower to resent the limitations of others. Humility softens unnecessary conflict because it reminds you that every human mind sees only part of reality. Do not become impatient with your progress. Years of habitual reaction will not disappear after one day of careful practice. You will still feel the impulse to defend yourself. You will still experience disappointment when treated unfairly. What changes first is not emotion but obedience to emotion. Little by little, the pause between impression and response grows longer. Reason gains more influence. Habit loses its command. Eventually, you discover that misunderstanding has become another ordinary event rather than an inner catastrophe. It arrives, it is examined, appropriate action is taken if necessary, and then attention returns to the present duty. Life continues. Peace remains intact because it was never entrusted to another person's understanding in the first place. This is the freedom available to every disciplined mind, not freedom from criticism, not freedom from false judgment, not freedom from imperfect relationships. Those things belong to the changing conditions of human life. The deeper freedom is remaining inwardly ordered while such conditions come and go. Begin practicing this today. Before leaving your home, remind yourself that you are entering a world where no one owes you perfect understanding. During every conversation, guard your own judgment more carefully than your reputation. Whenever emotion rises, examine the belief that produced it before accepting its command. At the end of the day, review your own conduct with greater seriousness than you review the opinions of others. The more faithfully you perform these practices, the less power misunderstanding will possess over your inner life. You will no longer measure the success of a day by whether everyone understood you. You will measure it by whether you remained truthful, just, patient, and governed by reason from beginning to end. That is the measure that cannot be stolen by rumor, weakened by criticism, or destroyed by another person's misunderstanding. It belongs entirely to you, and it grows stronger each time you choose inner discipline over outward approval. Number 5. Guard your peace above approval. There is a quiet bargain that many people make without ever speaking it aloud. They surrender their inner peace in exchange for the hope of being approved. They begin to shape their words so that no one is offended, soften their convictions so that no one is uncomfortable, and measure the value of each day by the reactions they receive rather than the quality of the choices they have made. At first, this bargain appears harmless. It promises acceptance, admiration, and belonging, yet hidden beneath it is a slow surrender of freedom. Every time you place approval above peace, you give another person authority over a mind that was meant to be governed by reason alone. Ask yourself with complete honesty how often your mood has depended upon the expressions on other people's faces. A conversation ends differently than you expected, and your thoughts immediately begin searching for signs of rejection. A message receives a brief reply, and you wonder whether respect has been withdrawn. A room grows quiet after you speak, and you begin rewriting your own words inside your mind. Notice what is happening. Your attention has left the only place where it has genuine authority. Instead of examining your own conduct, you are attempting to interpret minds that remain forever outside your command. This is not merely an unpleasant habit. It is a failure to distinguish between what belongs to you and what never has. Peace is cultivated through your own judgments. Approval is granted or withheld by other people according to reasons that may have little to do with truth. If you tie these two together, your inner condition becomes unstable because you have anchored it to something constantly changing. One person's admiration becomes another person's criticism. Today's praise becomes tomorrow's indifference. A life built upon such foundations cannot remain steady. Many imagine that the desire for approval is simply kindness or humility. Look more carefully. There is often fear hidden beneath it. Fear of being excluded, fear of disappointing others, fear of standing alone, fear of losing affection, fear of being thought ordinary, incapable, or difficult. These fears persuade you to negotiate against your own principles. They encourage you to remain silent when honesty is required, to agree when reason objects, and to perform rather than live sincerely. In seeking acceptance, you gradually become unfamiliar with your own character. The disciplined life begins when you recognize that peace cannot be borrowed from another person's opinion. It must be established within your own judgment. No amount of praise can create lasting tranquility for someone whose mind remains undisciplined. Likewise, criticism cannot destroy the peace of a person whose conscience is governed by virtue. This is why inner work always precedes outward stability. Before asking whether others approve of you, ask whether your own actions deserve your respect. Begin each morning with a deliberate examination before the demands of the day scatter your attention. Sit quietly and remind yourself that you are entering a world filled with changing preferences, changing emotions, and changing opinions. Some people will welcome you, others may misunderstand you. Some may admire your efforts, while others overlook them completely. None of these events determine whether today becomes a good day. That decision rests entirely upon whether you choose wisdom over impulse, fairness over resentment, courage over comfort, and moderation over excess. Carry this reflection with you wherever you go. It prepares the mind to meet uncertainty without becoming its servant. When praise arrives, receive it without dependence. When criticism appears, examine it without panic. When indifference meets your sincere effort, continue acting well without complaint. Your task is not to manage the responses of others. Your task is to preserve the integrity of your own choices. Consider how often approval changes the direction of your behavior. You hesitate before speaking because you imagine disagreement. You overcommit because refusing might disappoint someone. You apologize for decisions that required no apology. You continue unhealthy conversations because ending them may cause disapproval. You spend energy maintaining appearances rather than strengthening character. These are not small compromises. Each one teaches your mind that peace depends upon external agreement instead of internal discipline. Every unnecessary compromise leaves a quiet mark upon the soul. At first, you scarcely notice it. Then, over time, you begin losing confidence in your own judgment. Decisions become slower because you wait for reassurance. Convictions become weaker because they require constant confirmation. Eventually, you no longer know whether your choices come from reason or from the hope of pleasing everyone around you. This confusion creates exhaustion because the human mind cannot faithfully serve both virtue and universal approval at the same time. You must choose which master you will obey. One asks only that you govern yourself with honesty regardless of the outcome. The other demands endless adjustment according to changing expectations that can never be fully satisfied. The first strengthens you, the second empties you. Throughout the day, practice observing your first impulse whenever approval becomes uncertain. Perhaps someone questions your decision, perhaps your work goes unnoticed, perhaps another person receives recognition while your effort remains unseen. Before resentment develops, pause and ask yourself a difficult question. What exactly have I lost? Have I lost the opportunity to act justly? Have I lost the ability to think clearly? Have I lost the capacity to remain patient? If the answer is no, then your deepest possessions remain untouched. Most distress enters not because something essential has been taken away, but because imagination exaggerates what has occurred. The mind quietly whispers that being overlooked is the same as being worthless, that disagreement means rejection, or that criticism proves failure. These judgments deserve examination before they are believed. They are conclusions, not facts. Train yourself to interrupt them immediately. Say to yourself, another person's response does not define the quality of my character. My responsibility is to remain faithful to what reason requires. This single reminder can prevent countless unnecessary disturbances from taking root. There will be moments when seeking approval appears practical. You may believe that agreement will make life easier, preserve harmony, or protect important relationships. Sometimes compromise is indeed appropriate when it serves justice and mutual respect. Yet compromise becomes dangerous when it requires abandoning what you know to be right merely to avoid discomfort. Peace purchased through dishonesty is only temporary. Eventually your own conscience presents the account that must be paid. The mind, governed by virtue, values inward agreement above outward applause. This does not make such a person stubborn or difficult. On the contrary, genuine discipline produces humility because it recognizes the possibility of personal error. A wise person listens carefully, welcomes truthful correction, and changes course whenever reason demands it. Yet this willingness to learn differs completely from surrendering conviction simply to remain popular. One is guided by truth. The other is guided by fear. Examine also the subtle ways approval influences your emotions. You may feel unusually cheerful after receiving praise and unusually discouraged after receiving criticism. Notice how quickly your emotional state begins following circumstances beyond your control. If joy depends entirely upon admiration, sorrow will inevitably follow whenever admiration fades. Lasting steadiness requires a deeper foundation. That foundation is the daily practice of measuring yourself according to virtue rather than reputation. Each evening, before sleep overtakes you, become your own honest examiner. Ask where you sacrificed peace for acceptance. Ask where you agreed outwardly while disagreeing inwardly. Ask where fear of disappointing someone caused you to neglect what you knew was right. Ask where compliments tempted you toward vanity instead of gratitude. Ask where silence became cowardice instead of restraint. Do not hide from the answers. Self-examination loses all value the moment it becomes an exercise in self-protection. See yourself exactly as you were. Where improvement is needed, commit yourself to it. Where you acted well, acknowledge it quietly without pride. This habit gradually shifts your attention away from public approval toward personal responsibility. Another powerful discipline is to perform good actions that no one else will ever notice. Help someone without expecting acknowledgement. Fulfill an obligation without mentioning it afterward. Keep a promise that brings you no recognition. Speak truthfully even when silence would have earned greater approval. These unnoticed acts strengthen the conviction that virtue possesses its own reward independent of applause. As this practice deepens, you begin discovering an unexpected freedom. You no longer feel compelled to announce every effort or defend every choice. You stop measuring conversations by whether they increase your popularity. You become less interested in being admired and more interested in becoming trustworthy. This transformation is quiet yet profound. It removes a constant burden from the mind because you are no longer carrying the impossible task of managing every impression others form about you. There will always be individuals who approve of you for the wrong reasons, and others who criticize you despite your best efforts. Some admire confidence when it is actually arrogance. Others mistake patience for weakness. Some praise what deserves correction while condemning what deserves respect. If your peace depends upon these unstable judgments, it will rise and fall endlessly. Instead, let your standard remain fixed. Judge yourself according to whether your choices reflected wisdom, justice, courage, and self-restraint. These qualities remain valuable regardless of whether they receive applause or criticism. They belong entirely to the realm of your own responsibility where lasting freedom is possible. Do not expect this discipline to become effortless immediately. Years of seeking approval create deep habits within the mind. You will still notice moments when you crave reassurance or fear rejection. The goal is not to eliminate these feelings overnight. The goal is to prevent them from becoming your ruler. Every time you choose principle over popularity, reason becomes stronger. Every time you refuse to betray your conscience for temporary acceptance, your inner life grows steadier. Eventually, you begin noticing a remarkable change. Situations that once produced anxiety no longer possess the same power. Disagreement no longer feels like personal defeat. Silence from others no longer demands endless interpretation. Recognition becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes informative rather than devastating. You discover that the peace you were seeking from other people had been available within disciplined judgment all along. Carry this understanding into every part of your life. When entering a meeting, remind yourself that your responsibility is clarity and integrity, not universal agreement. When speaking with family, remember that affection grows stronger through honesty than through constant accommodation. When facing disappointment, refuse to conclude that external rejection diminishes inner worth. When success arrives, accept it with gratitude rather than dependence. Above all, protect the quiet order within your own mind. That order is more valuable than admiration because it cannot be purchased through performance or taken away by opinion. It is built through daily choices that align your actions with reason instead of fear. The world will continue changing around you. Opinions will rise and disappear. Approval will appear and fade. Expectations will shift without warning. Let these movements remain where they belong, outside the walls of your governing mind. Guard your peace not because comfort is the highest good, but because a peaceful mind is able to recognize and choose virtue without distraction. When peace becomes your priority instead of approval, your decisions grow clearer, your relationships become more honest, your words become more measured, and your character develops a firmness that no changing opinion can shake. You stop living as someone waiting to be accepted and begin living as someone committed to governing the only life that has ever truly been entrusted to your care. Number 6. Speak less, endure more with dignity. The loudest voice in your life is rarely the voice of another person. It is the restless voice within your own mind that insists every discomfort must be answered immediately, every insult must be repaid, every criticism must be corrected, and every hardship must be announced. Before any external difficulty defeats you, this inner habit has already weakened your judgment. It persuades you that constant expression is strength when, in reality, it is often nothing more than undisciplined reaction. The first victory does not come from speaking more forcefully. It comes from learning when silence protects reason better than words ever could. Many people believe they suffer because life gives them difficult circumstances. Look more carefully. They often suffer because they cannot endure those circumstances without making them larger through unnecessary speech. Every inconvenience becomes a complaint. Every disappointment becomes a story repeated again and again. Every obstacle becomes proof that life has been unfair. They believe that speaking constantly about hardship lightens its weight. Yet the opposite frequently happens. The more attention they give to discomfort, the more firmly it settles into the mind. They feed what they should be training themselves to endure. This does not mean suppressing truth or pretending that pain does not exist. It means refusing to become a servant to every impulse that demands immediate expression. A disciplined mind understands that not every feeling deserves a voice. Some emotions require examination before they deserve words. Some frustrations disappear when left alone for a short time. Others reveal themselves to be nothing more than wounded expectation once reason has had an opportunity to inspect them carefully. Your speech should become the servant of wisdom rather than the servant of emotion. Ask yourself how often you speak simply because silence feels uncomfortable. During disagreement, you rush to fill every pause. During criticism, you answer before understanding what has actually been said. During difficulty, you search for someone to carry your frustration instead of carrying it with dignity yourself. None of these habits strengthen character. They reveal that the mind has become dependent upon immediate release rather than patient examination. The disciplined life asks something far more demanding. It asks you to remain with your first impression without obeying it. It asks you to let emotion settle before allowing it to shape your response. This pause is not weakness. It is one of the highest forms of self-command. A person who cannot govern the tongue will struggle to govern the mind, because speech often reveals judgments that have never been tested by reason. Begin every morning with a simple commitment. Tell yourself that today there will be opportunities to react quickly. Someone may speak carelessly, plans may fail unexpectedly, your body may become tired, your efforts may pass unnoticed. Instead of promising yourself that none of these things will happen, prepare yourself to meet them without unnecessary complaint. This expectation changes the entire direction of the day. You stop demanding comfort from circumstances and begin demanding discipline from yourself. As the hours unfold, watch the moments when irritation first appears. It often arrives quietly. A delayed response, a forgotten promise, a careless remark. The mind immediately begins constructing arguments, explanations, and accusations. Before speaking, ask one question: will these words improve my character, or are they simply relieving temporary discomfort? This question alone prevents countless unnecessary conflicts because it redirects attention from emotional relief toward moral purpose. Many people mistake endurance for passive acceptance. They imagine that to endure means to become indifferent or powerless. True endurance is entirely different. It is active self-government. It is the deliberate refusal to surrender your reason simply because circumstances become difficult. It is continuing to choose justice when resentment would be easier, moderation when excess seems attractive, patience when irritation seeks control, and honesty when convenience invites compromise. Endurance without dignity becomes silent bitterness. Dignity without endurance becomes fragile pride. The disciplined person unites both. He bears what must be borne without poisoning his own mind through resentment. He neither glorifies suffering nor flees from it. He recognizes difficulty as another opportunity to strengthen judgment. Observe how quickly the undisciplined mind turns inconvenience into identity. A single failure becomes proof of personal inadequacy. A temporary setback becomes evidence that life itself has turned against you. One unpleasant conversation defines an entire relationship. These conclusions arise because emotion rushes ahead of reason. Instead of examining facts carefully, the mind accepts the first dramatic interpretation that appears. Refuse this habit. Whenever hardship enters your day, separate the event from the judgment you have attached to it. Losing an opportunity is one thing. Deciding that your future has been destroyed is another. Receiving criticism is one thing. Deciding that your worth has disappeared is another. Feeling physical discomfort is one thing. Concluding that you cannot continue is another. Between reality and interpretation stands your freedom. Protect that space carefully. Often reveals where this freedom has been surrendered. Listen closely to your own words. Do they magnify problems beyond their true size? Do they assign blame before responsibility has been examined? Do they seek sympathy before wisdom? Every unnecessary complaint teaches the mind that relief comes from expression rather than correction. Yet lasting improvement never begins there. It begins when judgment becomes more disciplined than emotion. Throughout the day, practice speaking only after your intention has become clear. Let every sentence serve one of three purposes: to communicate truth, to fulfill duty, to encourage justice. If your words accomplish none of these, consider whether silence may serve better. This discipline does not reduce your humanity, it refines it. You become slower to accuse, slower to exaggerate, slower to defend your pride, and quicker to observe what actually deserves attention. This practice transforms relationships in unexpected ways. Many conflicts continue not because problems are impossible to solve, but because each person speaks from immediate emotion instead of examined judgment. One harsh sentence invites another. One defensive explanation produces greater suspicion. Soon neither person remembers the original issue because both have become occupied with protecting wounded pride. Imagine entering such moments differently. Imagine allowing another person's anger to exist without immediately borrowing it into your own mind. Imagine listening long enough to distinguish between facts and assumptions. Imagine answering only after your own judgment has regained clarity. Such restraint is not submission, it is mastery over the impulse to let another person's emotional state dictate your own. There is another form of endurance that demands equal attention. It is the endurance required when progress remains invisible. Many people abandon worthy efforts because visible rewards arrive slowly. They expect discipline to produce immediate confidence, honesty to produce immediate trust, patience to produce immediate harmony. When results delay, discouragement begins speaking loudly within them. Here again, speak less and endure more. Your responsibility is faithful effort, not immediate reward. Seeds do not become trees because someone demands faster growth. Character develops through repeated choices whose value often becomes visible only after long practice. Continue acting well even when improvement appears gradual. Continue correcting yourself even when habits resist change. Continue choosing virtue even when no audience notices. The worth of these actions never depends upon immediate recognition. Each evening, return your attention inward instead of outward. Resist the temptation to count how many people appreciated you or misunderstood you. Instead, examine how many moments you remained governed by reason. Ask yourself where unnecessary words escaped because emotion became impatient. Ask where silence preserved clarity. Ask where discomfort tempted you to abandon self-command. Ask where endurance strengthened your character rather than hardening your heart. This evening examination is not a search for perfection. It is a commitment to accuracy. You cannot improve what you refuse to observe. Honest review prevents yesterday's mistakes from quietly becoming tomorrow's habits. It trains the mind to value correction more than self-defense. Another valuable exercise is to practice voluntary restraint in ordinary situations. When you know the answer to every conversation, allow someone else to finish speaking first. When you feel misunderstood in a minor matter, notice whether immediate correction is truly necessary. When frustration appears during routine inconveniences, carry it quietly for a time, instead of announcing it at once. These small acts prepare the soul for greater trials, because discipline grows through repeated practice rather than dramatic moments. Be careful not to mistake silence for avoidance. There are times when justice requires firm speech. There are moments when protecting another person demands clear words. There are occasions when truth must be expressed despite discomfort. The difference lies in the source. Does your speech arise from reason or from agitation? Is it guided by duty or by wounded pride? The disciplined person learns to distinguish these motives before opening the mouth. You will discover that much of what once felt urgent was only impatience wearing the appearance of importance. Many arguments lose their power when given time. Many offenses become insignificant after careful reflection. Many fears disappear once examined honestly. What remains after this examination deserves your attention. What disappears never deserved your disturbance. Enduring with dignity also changes your relationship with physical discomfort, fatigue, and inconvenience. Instead of asking constantly, "How can I escape this?" begin asking, "How can I meet this honorably?" This simple change redirects attention from circumstances toward character. Whether the task is difficult, the weather unpleasant, or the schedule demanding, the central question remains unchanged. Can you preserve justice, moderation, courage, and wisdom here? If the answer is yes, then the day still offers everything necessary for virtue. The world often celebrates those who speak the most confidently, react the most dramatically, and display every emotion without restraint. Do not confuse visibility with strength. True strength often appears quiet because it has no need to prove itself through noise. It is found in the person who remains composed while others become frantic, who listens while others interrupt, who fulfills obligations while others seek excuses, and who bears hardship without allowing bitterness to become a permanent companion. This kind of strength cannot be borrowed from inspiring words alone. It must be practiced until it becomes part of your character. Every difficult conversation becomes training. Every delay becomes training. Every disappointment becomes training. Every insult becomes training. Life continually offers opportunities to refine the soul if you stop demanding easier circumstances and begin demanding greater discipline from yourself. Remember that every unnecessary word consumes energy that could have strengthened judgment instead. Every complaint repeated without purpose weakens endurance. Every emotional reaction accepted without examination teaches the mind to remain a servant rather than becoming a ruler. Reverse this pattern deliberately, speak with intention, endure with steadiness, think before responding, examine before believing, correct yourself before correcting others. Eventually, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer experience silence as emptiness, but as strength held in reserve. Difficulties still arrive, yet they no longer scatter your thoughts as easily. Your words become fewer, but they carry greater weight because they emerge from careful judgment rather than passing emotion. Your endurance ceases to feel like forced resistance and becomes a natural expression of inner order. This is the dignity worth protecting, not the dignity built upon reputation or admiration, but the dignity that comes from remaining faithful to reason when circumstances invite disorder. No audience can give you this dignity, and no critic can take it away. It is formed quietly each time you refuse to let impulse become master, each time you choose measured speech over restless reaction, and each time you bear life's inevitable burdens with a mind that remains firmly governed by virtue rather than by emotion. Number 7. Detach from others' constant validation. You are carrying a burden that was never meant to belong to you. It is not the burden of your responsibilities, your duties, or your moral obligations. It is the burden of needing other people to continually reassure you that you are worthy. You may not admit this openly. You may even believe you have outgrown it. Yet if your peace rises whenever someone praises you and falls whenever someone ignores you, then your inner life is still being governed by voices outside your own reason. No person can live freely while waiting for constant confirmation from minds they do not control. Look carefully at how this dependence quietly enters your day. You complete a task well, yet instead of asking whether it was done with integrity, you wait to see whether anyone notices. You offer kindness, but your satisfaction depends on receiving gratitude. You make a difficult decision, then immediately search for agreement to feel certain it was right. Even when you know you have acted according to principle, you continue looking outward, hoping someone else will declare that your choice was good enough. This habit slowly weakens the soul because it teaches you to distrust your own disciplined judgment. The deepest danger is not that approval may disappear. The deeper danger is that you begin living for it without realizing it. You adjust your character to fit the expectations of every room you enter. You become agreeable when honesty is required. You become silent when justice calls for courage. You become busy trying to preserve admiration instead of preserving virtue. The person you present to the world gradually becomes shaped by anticipation rather than conviction. Little by little, you lose the ability to distinguish who you truly are from who you hope others will applaud. The disciplined mind refuses to accept this exchange. It understands that another person's approval is an external event, no different from favorable weather or pleasant fortune. It may be welcomed without becoming necessary. It may arrive without making you better, and it may disappear without making you worse. Your character cannot be strengthened by applause any more than it can be damaged by neglect. Only your own choices possess that power. Begin each morning by reminding yourself of a truth that most people avoid because it demands responsibility. No one is obligated to admire you today. No one is required to understand your efforts. No one owes you recognition for fulfilling your duty. At first this may seem severe, but hidden within it is remarkable freedom. Once you stop expecting validation as payment for every good action, you begin acting for the sake of what is right, rather than for the comfort of being acknowledged. As you prepare for the day, ask yourself a different set of questions than habit usually suggests. Do not ask whether people will appreciate your work. Ask whether your work will reflect discipline. Do not ask whether your choices will earn praise. Ask whether your choices will remain faithful to reason. Do not ask whether your words will make everyone approve of you. Ask whether your words will be truthful, measured, and necessary. These questions place your attention back where it belongs, within the boundaries of your own authority. Notice how quickly the mind invents stories whenever validation is absent. Someone does not respond immediately, and you conclude that you have disappointed them. A friend becomes distracted, and you imagine that affection has faded. Your effort receives little acknowledgement, and you begin believing it had no value. These conclusions are not reality, they are judgments created without sufficient evidence. A disciplined person refuses to accept every impression as truth. Before believing any anxious interpretation, pause and ask whether reason supports it or whether fear has simply spoken first. Fear often disguises itself as the desire to be appreciated. It whispers that if enough people approve of you, then you will finally become secure. Yet observe those who spend their lives collecting admiration. Satisfaction never remains with them for long. Today's praise becomes tomorrow's expectation. Yesterday's success creates pressure for greater success today. The appetite for validation grows stronger each time it is fed because it never addresses the real problem. The problem is not the absence of approval. The problem is the mistaken belief that approval can complete what only virtue can complete. This is why you must learn to become a trustworthy witness of your own conduct. When your day ends, your first concern should not be whether others admired your actions. Your first concern should be whether your conscience can honestly affirm them. Did you choose justice when selfishness tempted you? Did you remain patient when irritation invited reaction? Did you preserve moderation when excess promised pleasure? Did you think carefully before acting? These questions strengthen the only judgment that deserves lasting authority over your life, your own disciplined examination. Throughout the day, there will be many opportunities to practice detachment from validation. Someone else may receive the recognition you secretly hoped would come to you. Resist comparing your worth to their reward. Another person may fail to acknowledge your effort. Resist interpreting silence as rejection. A conversation may end without agreement. Resist assuming that disagreement diminishes your integrity. Every one of these moments invites you either to surrender your peace or to strengthen your independence. The mind naturally seeks comfort through comparison. It watches how others are treated and then measures itself against those observations. This habit quietly produces envy, resentment, and insecurity. Instead of asking whether you have become wiser than you were yesterday, you begin asking whether someone else has received more attention than you. This is a dangerous shift because comparison directs your effort towards circumstances you cannot govern instead of toward the character you can refine every single day. There is another form of validation that deserves careful attention. It comes from constantly explaining your intentions in the hope that everyone will recognize your goodness. The disciplined life requires something different. Let your consistency become your explanation. Let your fairness become your argument. Let your reliability become your introduction. Character develops through repeated action, not repeated persuasion. If another person refuses to see what your conduct steadily reveals, further effort to convince them often produces only greater dependence upon their approval. This does not mean becoming indifferent to wise counsel. On the contrary, genuine discipline welcomes correction because correction helps reveal hidden faults. Learn to distinguish between seeking guidance and seeking validation. Guidance aims at improvement. Validation aims at emotional reassurance. One strengthens virtue, the other strengthens dependence. Welcome advice that exposes weakness, but do not crave compliments that merely soothe insecurity. A valuable exercise is to deliberately perform acts of goodness that remain completely unseen. Complete an unpleasant responsibility without announcing it. Keep a promise that no one else remembers. Help another person without expecting gratitude. Resist the temptation to reveal every sacrifice you make. These quiet disciplines train the mind to discover satisfaction in virtue itself, rather than in public acknowledgement. They remind you that the worth of a good action does not increase because someone witnessed it. As the day continues, remain attentive to your inner dialogue. Whenever disappointment arises because someone failed to appreciate you, ask yourself what exactly has been lost. Has your honesty disappeared? Has your self-control been taken from you? Has your capacity to choose wisely vanished? If these remain intact, then your most valuable possessions are still entirely your own. Only a mistaken judgment tells you otherwise. You must also recognize how exhausting the search for validation truly is. It demands endless performance because other people's expectations constantly change. What impresses one person disappoints another. What earns praise today may invite criticism tomorrow. If your identity depends upon satisfying every observer, you will eventually become divided against yourself. One part of you will seek truth, while another seeks acceptance. One cannot faithfully serve both forever. Eventually, you must decide whether you wish to become admirable or merely admired. Each evening, withdraw from the noise of the day and examine yourself without mercy but without cruelty. Ask where you allowed another person's opinion to determine your emotional state. Ask where you remained faithful to principle despite receiving no acknowledgement. Ask where insecurity disguised itself as humility. Ask where you acted only after receiving permission from someone else's approval. These reflections are not meant to discourage you. They are meant to reveal the invisible chains that still bind your judgment. Then make one quiet resolution for tomorrow. Choose a single opportunity where you will act according to reason without waiting for encouragement. Perhaps you will speak honestly despite possible disagreement. Perhaps you will complete difficult work without expecting recognition. Perhaps you will remain calm when your efforts go unnoticed. Each faithful choice weakens dependence and strengthens freedom. There will be moments when loneliness accompanies this path. Detaching from constant validation does not always feel pleasant because it removes a familiar source of emotional comfort. The mind may briefly feel uncertain when it no longer receives continual reassurance. Do not mistake this discomfort for failure. It is simply the feeling of learning to stand upon your own moral foundation rather than leaning upon the changing opinions of others. Stay with the practice. Confidence born from discipline grows slowly, but once established, it cannot be easily shaken. Remember that every human being forms judgments according to limited knowledge. Even those who sincerely care for you cannot fully perceive your motives, your struggles, or your intentions. Why then should their incomplete understanding become the highest court over your peace? Respect their perspectives without surrendering your inner government to them. Listen carefully, evaluate honestly, and then return to reason as your final guide. Your purpose is not to become emotionally isolated. You are meant to care for others, cooperate with them, and contribute to the common good. Yet there is a profound difference between living with others and living through their approval. One reflects justice, the other reflects attachment. A disciplined person can love deeply without becoming enslaved by acceptance. Such a person offers kindness freely because kindness is right, not because kindness guarantees appreciation. With continued practice, you will notice a quiet transformation. Your decisions become steadier because they are no longer delayed by the hope of receiving approval. Your conversations become more sincere because you no longer shape every sentence to secure admiration. Your work becomes more consistent because your motivation comes from duty instead of applause. Your peace becomes more durable because it rests upon something that changing opinions cannot touch. Carry this understanding into every tomorrow. Let your first loyalty belong to wisdom rather than popularity. Let your confidence arise from integrity rather than compliments. Let your satisfaction come from fulfilling your responsibilities rather than collecting recognition. Every day that you loosen your dependence upon constant validation, you reclaim another portion of your freedom. Eventually you discover that the approval you once chased so desperately was never capable of giving what disciplined reason had been offering you from the very beginning. A stable mind, a clear conscience, and a life directed by virtue instead of by the uncertain judgments of others. Number 8. Master yourself, ignore needless criticism. Before you learn to ignore needless criticism, you must first understand why it wounds you so deeply. The pain does not begin when another person speaks. It begins when your own judgment immediately accepts their words as a measure of your worth. A careless remark enters through your ears, but it is your own mind that grants it authority. If you never examine this habit, you will spend your life believing that other people possess the power to disturb you, when in truth much of that power has been surrendered willingly. The disciplined life begins with reclaiming what has always belonged to you, the government of your own judgment. Many people imagine that strength means never being criticized. They spend enormous effort trying to avoid disapproval, hoping that careful performance will protect them from unpleasant opinions. Yet no human life has ever escaped criticism. A person is criticized for speaking and criticized for remaining silent. One is judged for acting quickly and judged for moving too slowly. One is condemned for ambition and condemned for contentment. If you build your peace upon the impossible hope of universal approval, you condemn yourself to endless anxiety. The wiser path is not to eliminate criticism, but to remove its unnecessary authority over your inner life. Observe what happens the moment criticism reaches you. Before reason has spoken, another force rushes forward. Pride becomes defensive. Fear imagines rejection. Anger searches for retaliation. Vanity begins constructing arguments to restore a wounded image. All of this happens within moments. Yet none of these reactions prove that the criticism is true or false. They merely reveal that the mind has become accustomed to obeying its first impressions instead of examining them. The first discipline is not answering the critic. The first discipline is refusing to let your initial emotion become your master. Each morning, before entering the demands of the day, prepare yourself for what every human life eventually encounters. Tell yourself that opinions will come from people who know you well, from people who barely know you at all, and from people who understand neither your intentions nor your circumstances. Some criticism will be thoughtful, some will be careless, some will contain valuable correction. Some will arise from envy, misunderstanding, impatience, or ignorance. Your responsibility is not deciding which voices exist. Your responsibility is deciding which voices deserve entry into your judgment. Carry this preparation with you throughout the day. When someone speaks against you, resist the urge to react immediately. Delay your conclusion. The disciplined mind never rushes to either defend itself or condemn another person. Instead, it asks a simple question: is there truth here that can improve my character? If the answer is yes, then criticism has become a teacher rather than an enemy. If the answer is no, then there is nothing requiring disturbance. In both cases, emotional agitation becomes unnecessary because your attention remains fixed upon improvement rather than wounded pride. This distinction changes everything. The undisciplined person hears criticism as an attack upon identity. The disciplined person hears it as information requiring examination. One becomes consumed by emotion, the other becomes occupied with understanding. One wastes energy defending an image, the other strengthens character by separating useful correction from empty noise. The difference lies not in the words that were spoken, but in the judgment that follows them. Be careful not to assume that every painful remark deserves equal consideration. Some people criticize because they seek truth. Others criticize because they seek victory. Some speak from careful observation. Others speak from passing irritation. If you give identical weight to every opinion, you place your peace at the mercy of whoever speaks loudest. Wisdom requires discrimination. Listen respectfully, examine honestly, and then decide according to reason rather than according to emotional pressure. There is another danger hidden within needless criticism. It tempts you to become obsessed with defending your reputation while neglecting your character. Reputation exists in minds you cannot govern. Character exists within choices you make every day. One changes according to rumor, misunderstanding, or admiration. The other changes only through your own decisions. If you sacrifice your principles merely to protect your reputation, you exchange something lasting for something uncertain. No disciplined person makes such a trade. Throughout the day, practice directing your attention back toward what remains within your authority. Someone misjudges your intentions. Can you control that judgment? No. Can you choose patience instead of resentment? Yes. Someone speaks unfairly about your efforts. Can you erase their opinion? No. Can you continue fulfilling your duty with integrity? Yes. This separation is not merely an idea to admire. It is a habit to practice repeatedly until it becomes the natural movement of your mind. Notice also how often needless criticism awakens old insecurities rather than present realities. A single remark may revive years of hidden self-doubt. Instead of responding to today's words, you begin reliving yesterday's fears. The disciplined person interrupts this process by asking whether the present situation truly deserves such emotional weight. Do not allow old wounds to transform every criticism into a catastrophe. Examine the current facts before accepting the conclusions offered by memory or fear. Your speech also deserves careful attention during these moments. There is a powerful temptation to answer every accusation, correct every misunderstanding, and justify every decision. Yet constant self-defense rarely produces inner freedom. Often it strengthens attachment to the very opinions you claim not to value. Speak when truth requires it. Clarify when justice demands it. Beyond that, let your conduct continue speaking long after the conversation has ended. A life consistently governed by virtue becomes its own strongest answer. As the day unfolds, make another quiet observation. Many criticisms disappear if you refuse to nourish them with endless attention. The mind has a habit of replaying unpleasant conversations long after they have ended. Hours later, you continue arguing with absent people. Days later, you imagine responses you never gave. In doing so, you allow a brief event to occupy far more of your life than it deserves. This is voluntary suffering. The criticism lasted a moment. Your attachment prolongs it. Instead, train yourself to return deliberately to your present responsibility. Once you have honestly examined the criticism, ask whether anything remains requiring action. If correction is necessary, begin correcting yourself immediately. If no correction is needed, release the matter completely. Refusing to carry unnecessary burdens is not carelessness. It is wise stewardship of your attention. There will also be occasions when criticism comes from those closest to you. These situations often test the soul more deeply because affection makes judgment more difficult. Here again, avoid two extremes. Do not reject every uncomfortable word simply because it hurts. Do not accept every accusation simply because it comes from someone important. Love does not remove the need for reason. Listen carefully, weigh the evidence honestly, and let truth rather than emotion determine your conclusion. Another valuable discipline is learning to welcome correction before it becomes humiliation. Pride waits until failure becomes obvious before it changes. Humility seeks improvement while faults remain small. Ask trusted people where your judgment becomes clouded, where impatience appears, where vanity quietly influences your decisions. This practice is entirely different from craving criticism. It is a deliberate search for truth rather than emotional punishment. One weakens the soul, the other refines it. Each evening, withdraw from the voices of the world and become your own examiner. Ask yourself which criticisms disturbed you most deeply. Then ask why. Was your peace shaken because the words were true, or because your pride resisted them? Did you become defensive before understanding? Did you dismiss useful advice because it wounded your self-image? Did you spend more time replaying another person's opinion than correcting your own conduct? These questions reveal whether your greatest struggle lies outside you or within you. Do not conduct this examination harshly, but conduct it honestly. There is no benefit in condemning yourself, and there is equally no benefit in excusing yourself. Accuracy is the aim. See your strengths without vanity. See your faults without despair. A person who can observe himself truthfully has already gained an advantage over one who spends life protecting comforting illusions. Strengthen this habit further by practicing small acts of emotional restraint. The next time someone offers a careless opinion, allow yourself a full moment before replying. Notice the urge to interrupt or defend. Let that urge pass through your mind without obeying it. The next time someone misunderstands your intention, ask whether immediate correction is truly necessary. The next time you hear praise followed by criticism, refuse to let either determine your sense of worth. These quiet exercises gradually build an inner stability that cannot be achieved through theory alone. Remember also that those who criticize you are themselves governed by their own judgments, fears, expectations, and limitations. This realization should not lead to contempt, but to perspective. Human beings often speak from incomplete understanding because no one sees every circumstance clearly. Recognizing this truth makes forgiveness easier. It reminds you that imperfection belongs not only to others but also to yourself. Do not mistake indifference for mastery. Ignoring needless criticism does not mean refusing to learn. It means refusing to become emotionally enslaved by opinions that neither improve your character nor alter your duty. Mastery lies in remaining teachable without becoming fragile. It lies in welcoming truth while remaining unmoved by empty hostility. It lies in preserving calm, regardless of whether another person's words flatter or offend you. With time, your relationship with criticism begins to change. Instead of fearing it, you begin using it as an instrument of self-examination. Instead of resisting every uncomfortable observation, you search patiently for whatever portion may strengthen your judgment. Instead of allowing careless remarks to linger within your thoughts, you return your attention to the work that reason has placed before you. Eventually, you discover that your greatest opponent was never the critic standing outside you. It was the undisciplined habit within you that accepted every opinion without examination. Once that habit begins to weaken, unnecessary criticism loses much of its power. The world continues speaking as it always has, but your mind no longer grants every voice equal authority. You become slower to react, quicker to examine, steadier under pressure, and more faithful to your own moral purpose. Carry this discipline into every tomorrow. Meet criticism with patience instead of haste. Meet correction with gratitude instead of pride. Meet empty hostility with silence instead of resentment. Let each encounter become another opportunity to strengthen the one thing that truly belongs to you: a mind governed by reason, a character shaped by virtue, and an inner life that no needless criticism can command unless you first surrender it yourself. Number 9. Virtue requires no public justification. There is a quiet temptation that follows nearly every sincere effort to live well. It is not the temptation to abandon virtue altogether. It is the temptation to make virtue visible, to display it, defend it, and persuade others to recognize it. The mind begins to crave acknowledgement for doing what it already knows is right. It quietly asks to be noticed for its patience, admired for its discipline, praised for its honesty, or respected for its restraint. At first, this desire appears harmless, yet it slowly changes the purpose of your actions. Instead of acting because virtue is good in itself, you begin acting because you hope someone else will confirm its value. This is the moment when your inner freedom begins slipping away. A disciplined life does not require an audience to become meaningful. The worth of justice does not increase because people applaud it. The value of honesty does not depend upon recognition. Self-restraint does not become greater because others witness it. Virtue possesses its own completeness because it transforms the one thing entrusted entirely to your care, your own character. The moment you require public approval to feel satisfied with a good action, you have attached your peace to something outside your command. Look carefully at how this habit appears in ordinary moments. You complete a difficult responsibility, but immediately feel disappointed because no one acknowledges the effort. You remain calm during conflict, yet secretly hope others will notice your restraint. You choose integrity when dishonesty would have been easier, but part of your mind waits for someone to admire your decision. Even acts of generosity become opportunities to seek appreciation rather than opportunities to fulfill duty. The action itself may remain outwardly good, yet the mind quietly shifts its loyalty from virtue toward recognition. The disciplined person examines this movement without excuses. Ask yourself honestly why you become discouraged when your good actions remain unseen. Is the disappointment truly about justice, or is it about the absence of praise? Have you performed your duty, or have you entered into an unspoken bargain expecting admiration as payment? These questions are uncomfortable because they reveal motives that often remain hidden beneath respectable behavior. Yet, self-examination begins precisely where comfort ends. Begin every morning with a deliberate reminder that today offers countless opportunities to act well without receiving acknowledgement. You may fulfill responsibilities that no one notices. You may keep promises that others have forgotten. You may exercise patience with people who never realize the effort required. None of these circumstances diminish the value of your conduct. Before the day begins, settle this matter firmly within yourself. Your responsibility is to choose rightly. Recognition belongs entirely outside your authority. Carry this understanding into your first conversation, your first task, and your first challenge. When you complete something worthwhile, resist the immediate impulse to seek confirmation. Allow yourself to experience the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing your conduct remained faithful to reason. This satisfaction differs completely from pride. Pride depends upon comparison. Quiet confidence depends upon integrity. One seeks witnesses. The other requires only an honest conscience. Notice how quickly the undisciplined mind begins constructing explanations for its own goodness. It wants others to understand every sacrifice, every difficulty, every noble intention. It fears being misunderstood because it believes misunderstanding diminishes virtue itself. Yet another person's incomplete understanding cannot reduce the worth of an action performed with justice and wisdom. Truth remains unchanged even when it passes unnoticed. Character remains intact even when others fail to appreciate it. This realization frees you from one of the most exhausting habits of the human mind, the endless need to justify yourself. How much energy has been spent explaining motives to people determined not to understand? How many hours have disappeared defending decisions already made according to careful judgment? How often have you replayed conversations hoping to improve another person's opinion of you? Each of these efforts quietly assumes that peace depends upon external agreement. The disciplined mind rejects this assumption entirely. That does not mean refusing to clarify facts when duty requires it. There are moments when honesty demands explanation. Responsibilities sometimes require transparency. Relationships occasionally benefit from thoughtful communication. Yet there is a profound difference between explaining to fulfill duty and explaining to satisfy insecurity. One arises from wisdom, the other arises from attachment. Learn to distinguish these motives carefully before speaking. As the day unfolds, practice allowing your actions to stand without unnecessary defense. Complete your work thoroughly without announcing every effort. Offer kindness without expecting gratitude. Correct your mistakes without performing your humility for others. Remain faithful to your principles even when no one recognizes the discipline involved. These quiet exercises strengthen the habit of valuing virtue for its own sake rather than for its public appearance. The desire for recognition often disguises itself as fairness. The mind says, "People should know how much I have done." Perhaps they should, yet whether they do or not remains outside your authority. If you refuse to act well until appreciation is guaranteed, your character becomes dependent upon circumstances you cannot govern. A disciplined person refuses such dependence. Goodness is chosen because it is right, not because it promises applause. Observe another subtle danger. Once you begin performing virtue for recognition, you naturally become discouraged whenever recognition fails to arrive. Resentment quietly enters the soul. You begin keeping invisible accounts of your sacrifices. You remember every kindness that went unnoticed, every effort that received little acknowledgement, every duty that seemed unrewarded. Instead of becoming more generous, you become increasingly disappointed. Instead of finding peace through discipline, you find frustration through expectation. This disappointment is not caused by virtue. It is caused by the hidden demand attached to it. Remove the demand, and much of the suffering disappears. Continue acting with justice, but release the expectation that every just action must produce admiration. Continue exercising patience, but abandon the hope that everyone will appreciate your restraint. Continue speaking truthfully, but do not require universal agreement before your conscience can remain at peace. Throughout the day, whenever you notice the desire to be recognized, pause and examine it. Ask yourself whether your character has truly gained anything by another person's approval. Has praise made you wiser? Has admiration increased your integrity? Has public acknowledgement strengthened your self-control? If not, why should the absence of these things diminish your satisfaction in acting rightly? The answer reveals that the value of virtue has never depended upon outside confirmation. Practice directing your attention inward rather than outward. Instead of wondering how your conduct appeared to others, ask whether it reflected justice, moderation, courage, and sound judgment. These qualities belong entirely within the realm of your own responsibility. Unlike reputation, they cannot be granted by another person or taken away through misunderstanding. They are built choice by choice, often in moments that remain invisible to everyone except yourself. There is remarkable freedom in becoming unknown for your goodness. When no audience is required, every ordinary moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen character. Washing dishes with care, keeping your word in private, refusing dishonest gain when no one would discover it, remaining calm during inconvenience when no praise is expected. These unnoticed choices shape the soul more deeply than dramatic acts performed before many witnesses. Character is formed in hidden decisions long before it becomes visible through outward conduct. Each evening, return to yourself without distraction. Do not count how many people appreciated you today. Count how many opportunities you remained faithful to reason. Ask where you quietly fulfilled your responsibilities without expecting acknowledgement. Ask where disappointment revealed attachment to recognition. Ask where you explained yourself more than duty required. Ask where your conscience remained clear even though others misunderstood your intentions. Do not fear these questions. They are not accusations but instruments of freedom. Every honest answer reveals another place where dependence upon public judgment can be loosened. Every act performed for virtue alone strengthens the quiet stability that no crowd can either bestow or remove. Another valuable exercise is deliberately allowing some good actions to remain completely invisible. Resist mentioning every sacrifice. Resist reminding others of your generosity. Resist drawing attention to your discipline. Let these actions become private agreements between your reason and your conscience. You will gradually discover that the soul becomes lighter when it stops carrying the burden of being recognized for everything it does well. Be equally cautious of seeking moral superiority through visible virtue. The undisciplined mind sometimes compares its own restraint with another person's weakness. It secretly enjoys appearing more disciplined, more patient, or more principled. Yet comparison corrupts virtue because it shifts attention from self-government towards self-exaltation. Your task is not to appear better than another person. Your task is to become better than you were yesterday. There will be moments when your integrity costs you admiration. Others may misunderstand your motives. Some may question your decisions. Some may even accuse you of faults you have not committed. Meet these situations calmly. If your conscience remains clear after honest examination, continue walking the path reason has shown you. The truth does not become false because it is doubted. A just action does not become unjust because it is criticized. Hold firmly to this understanding whenever external opinion attempts to disturb your inner order. Remember also that every human being judges according to limited knowledge. Even those who sincerely wish to understand you cannot fully see your intentions, your struggles, or the private disciplines shaping your choices. Why then should complete understanding from others become a condition for your peace? Accept that misunderstanding belongs to ordinary human life. Let it exist without allowing it to govern your conduct. As this practice deepens, something remarkable begins to change within you. You become less eager to announce your accomplishments because fulfillment no longer depends upon applause. You become less defensive because your identity no longer rests upon reputation alone. You become steadier during both praise and criticism because neither determines the quality of your character. Your attention returns again and again to the only place where lasting improvement is possible, your own judgment. Eventually you discover that the strongest form of confidence is also the quietest. It does not need constant explanation because it rests upon disciplined action rather than public opinion. It does not become anxious when unnoticed because it already possesses the approval of an examined conscience. It does not seek admiration because it has found something far more enduring, the steady knowledge that each day has been lived according to reason instead of vanity. Carry this understanding into every future decision. Let your conduct remain sincere whether it is witnessed or unseen. Let your goodness remain consistent whether it receives praise or silence. Let your discipline remain firm whether it earns admiration or misunderstanding. The more faithfully you practice this way of living, the more clearly you will see that virtue has never required an audience to possess its full worth. It asks only for your unwavering commitment, your honest self-examination, and your daily willingness to govern yourself according to reason rather than according to the changing judgments of the world. Number 10. Live truth without seeking permission. You have been taught, often without noticing it, to ask for permission before living according to truth. Not permission from law or duty, but permission from opinion. You hesitate before speaking honestly because you imagine how others might react. You soften your judgment because you fear disagreement. You delay correct action because you are waiting for approval that may never come. In this hesitation, life quietly passes you by, not because truth is absent, but because you have trained yourself to require external confirmation before obeying what reason already knows. Look closely at how this pattern forms. A situation appears, and reason presents a clear judgment about what is right. Yet immediately another voice rises within you, asking whether it will be accepted. You begin calculating reactions instead of examining truth. You begin measuring comfort instead of measuring correctness. In this shift, your guiding principle changes. You are no longer governed by what is right, but by what is permitted by imagined observers. This is how the mind becomes divided against itself. One part sees truth, the other fears consequence, the second gradually gains control. The disciplined life begins by refusing this internal surrender. Truth does not require permission to exist. It does not wait for agreement. It does not increase in validity when it is approved, nor does it diminish when it is rejected. A statement is either aligned with reality or it is not. An action is either just or it is not. Your responsibility is not to negotiate truth with the opinions of others, but to recognize it clearly within yourself and act accordingly. Each morning, before entering the demands of the day, examine the role fear plays in your decision-making. Ask yourself where you are likely to hesitate today. Where will you soften your words to avoid discomfort? Where will you delay necessary action to avoid judgment? Where will you remain silent, not because silence is wise, but because approval feels safer than honesty? These questions expose the hidden ways in which permission-seeking governs behavior more than principle. Prepare yourself for a simple but demanding truth. You will not be universally understood. You will not be universally approved. You will not be universally comfortable. This is not a flaw in your life. It is a condition of human existence. Different people hold different judgments, shaped by their own fears, desires, and limited perspectives. If you allow these shifting opinions to determine your actions, you place your inner life under unstable authority. A disciplined person refuses such instability. Instead, anchor your decisions in what belongs entirely to you. Your judgments, your choices, your intentions, your capacity to distinguish what is right from what is not right. These are within your command. Everything else belongs to the realm of external judgment. When you confuse these two domains, you suffer needlessly. When you separate them clearly, you regain control of your mind. As the day unfolds, you will encounter moments that test this clarity. You may recognize a truth that contradicts popular opinion. You may see a necessary action that others would not choose. You may feel pressure to conform simply to preserve harmony. In each of these moments, pause long enough to examine what is truly at stake. Is the cost of honesty truly danger, or is it discomfort? Is the risk of truth actual harm, or is it merely the loss of approval? Most often, what you fear losing is not safety, but comfort in the eyes of others. The undisciplined mind confuses disagreement with danger. It treats disapproval as if it were injury. It behaves as though being misunderstood is equivalent to being harmed. From this confusion arises hesitation, and from hesitation arises regret. Many people do not fail because they lack knowledge of truth. They fail because they require external permission to act on what they already understand internally. Begin correcting this pattern by practicing small acts of independent judgment. Speak a necessary truth clearly without over-explaining it. Make a correct decision without waiting for consensus. Choose what is right even when it is unpopular in a minor situation. These small actions train the mind to recognize that approval is not a requirement for correct living. Each time you act without seeking permission, you strengthen your ability to trust reason over reaction. Be careful not to confuse independence with impulsiveness. Living without seeking permission does not mean rejecting all guidance or ignoring wisdom from others. It means evaluating guidance through reason rather than submitting your judgment to it. Advice may inform you, but it should not replace your capacity to decide. Others may illuminate possibilities, but they should not become the final authority over your conduct. The final judgment must remain within you. There will be moments when truth requires discomfort. Speaking honestly may disrupt relationships, Acting justly may challenge expectations. Refusing dishonesty may create tension. In these moments, the mind often seeks escape through delay. It whispers that perhaps waiting will make the decision easier, or that silence will preserve peace. Yet postponing truth rarely reduces difficulty. More often, it increases internal conflict. What was simple becomes complicated. What was clear becomes clouded. What was a single decision becomes prolonged avoidance. The disciplined person understands that discomfort is not a reliable indicator of error. Many correct actions feel uncomfortable at first because they challenge habit, expectation, or fear. If comfort were your guide, you would often choose what is easiest rather than what is right. But ease is not the measure of truth. Alignment with reason is. Throughout the day, observe how often you adjust your behavior based on imagined judgment. You may change your tone when speaking to certain people. You may avoid expressing honest thoughts in certain settings. You may present a version of yourself that feels safer to external perception. Each adjustment may seem small, but together they slowly fragment your integrity. A divided self cannot experience lasting peace. The remedy is not to become careless in expression, but to become consistent in principle. Let your words, actions, and decisions reflect the same internal standard regardless of audience. Whether observed or unobserved, whether praised or ignored, whether agreed with or challenged, your conduct should remain governed by reason. This consistency is what gradually replaces anxiety with stability. Each evening, return to your day and examine where permission-seeking influenced your choices. Where did you hesitate unnecessarily? Where did you avoid truth to preserve comfort? Where did you act more for acceptance than for correctness? Do not judge yourself harshly in this reflection. The purpose is not condemnation but clarity. Only what is clearly seen can be corrected. You may discover that many moments of regret were not caused by wrong action, but by delayed action. Truth was known but postponed. Correct judgment was present but not followed. In these delays, fear quietly replaced reason. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward dismantling it. Strengthen yourself further by practicing acceptance of misunderstanding. You will sometimes act correctly and still be misunderstood. You will sometimes speak truthfully and still be misjudged. You will sometimes choose wisely and still be questioned. If your peace depends upon being understood, you will remain fragile. If your peace depends upon acting rightly, you become steady regardless of external response. There is a deeper freedom that emerges when you stop seeking permission to live according to truth. It is the freedom of acting without internal division. No longer do you argue with yourself before every decision. No longer do you wait for invisible approval before moving forward. No longer do you treat other people's imagined reactions as the final authority over your conduct. Instead, reason becomes immediate, and action follows without unnecessary delay. Over time, this transforms the quality of your life. You begin to recognize that most suffering came not from truth itself, but from hesitation before truth. You realize that many opportunities were lost, not because they were impossible, but because they were delayed. You see that much of your anxiety was created by seeking permission from minds that were never responsible for guiding your life in the first place. At this stage, something subtle but profound occurs. You begin to trust your own capacity to discern what is right. Not because you believe yourself infallible, but because you have trained yourself to examine judgments carefully before accepting them. You no longer rush into action blindly, nor do you freeze in doubt. Instead, you observe, evaluate, and then act according to reason, without unnecessary dependence on external approval. This is what it means to live truth without seeking permission. It is not rebellion against others, but liberation from unnecessary dependency. It is the return of authority to the only place it has ever truly belonged, your own examined judgment. When this becomes your way of living, truth no longer feels like something to request. It becomes something to recognize and embody immediately, without hesitation, without apology, and without waiting for the world to agree.